And from me to you, a live, happy new year. And that may be the happiest thing I'm going to say all year, because I was away for 3 weeks on a well-earned vacation, and when you come back and try and pick up things, you think, my goodness gracious me, or words to that effect, the entire country and the entire province is going to hell in a handbasket. It's not quite as bad as that, perhaps, but there are a number of major stories brewing and developing in British Columbia right now, on which we plan on the Webster show to give you the most detailed possible coverage. For instance, in Montreal today, the Canadian Pacific directors are meeting, and we're going to find out who runs British Columbia, whether it is that charming man, Big Julie, Ian Sinclair, the head of Canadian Pacific, or whether it is the government of the province of British Columbia. Now that's a fascinating story in itself, because right on the face of it, CPI is a Canadian corporation. Absolutely nothing to stop a Canadian corporation buying control of another Canadian corporation, except for the political psychology involved in it. Imagine the shock and horror and potential political trouble that Bill Bennett would be in if Mac and Blow were sold, far less to Domtar, but to Canadian Pacific, whose image of public acceptability is somewhat below 50 degrees Celsius. You know, nobody likes the CPR, and of course nobody likes CPI. Bill Bennett has moved in, despite some apparent hypocrisies in his particular action, tough not only on this one, but on a number of other issues that we'll be going into this morning. For instance, not necessarily this morning all the way. For instance, we've got big Labour smouldering and muttering in as restrained a manner as possible, that they're very much concerned about the proclamation of Section 11, of which all our viewers are well aware, because it was tagged on to the settlement of the Kootenay school strike. That's something apart, deadly serious, very important, and we'll give you full coverage. But however, I am not one, I'm afraid, in certain areas, either to forgive or to forget, where the public interest is deeply involved. This will be the last time, I suspect, I throw up the picture of citizen John Farris. I've merely put him up as a cue. He is still in England on his extended vacation, is now no longer, even on paper, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of British Columbia. Instead, we have some new appointments. The new appointments must be welcomed. That of Nathan Nemetz as Chief Justice. He went from the Supreme Court to the Court of Appeal. Thoroughly competent, admirable man who will do an excellent job as the Chief Justice of the Court of Appeal of British Columbia. His replacement at the lower level, while it was taken from the ranks of the practicing members of the legal profession, and not, as some thought, should have been taken from a serving judge, went to a man who is thoroughly admired and respected in the profession. That, of course, is Alan McEachin. That matter, however, cannot, I'm talking about the matter of how the federal and provincial government handled the Farris affair, cannot be allowed simply to go away. The establishment at the moment is sitting back quite smugly, rubbing its hands and saying, oh, well, the Farris thing can be forgotten. Let's wait and see. But for Attorney General Gardy Gardam, I must continue my delicately probing comments on what he plans to do. No one will have forgotten the incredible actions of the Judicial Council of British Columbia, which did the Nelson touch, perhaps we should call it the Gardam touch, you know. I see nothing wrong with a judge with alcoholic problems continuing to sit on the bench. Matter of fact, one can only hope that all other alcoholics in the civil service get the same treatment as did that unfortunate judge. An extended, unlimited leave of absence until the matter is solved. Judges, as I've said before and will say again, are a different brand of people with special privileges who must be dealt with in a different way. And I want to repeat, quite seriously, the responsibilities this year for Mr. Gardam. It is an open secret that there are other judges in the provincial bench who have alcoholism problems. Had the first one been handled with elan and sophistication and efficiency, one could have had faith in Mr. Gardam and his merry men in handling the others. I suspect that there is a trend in Victoria for the Attorney General's Department to look the other way again and say, it's not our responsibility, that's the responsibility of Larry Goulet, the Chief Judge. It may well be. Will we know what, if anything, is done? No, we will not. Unless we keep our noses and our eyes very close to the situation and not be afraid to report to you further instances which may well occur. So, Mr. Gardam, be on your guardum, Gardy, if I might say that much. This morning, we're going to start deadly serious with the Finance Minister, Evan Wolfe. Evan Wolfe, as you know, brought down a new provincial dictum on taxation. I'm not quite sure what it is. I know there's a freeze on something or other. I know that it looks like Evan Wolfe is trying to pull off a Proposition 13 type move, whereby you, who will be expected to vote in a provincial election this year, will vote social credit because your taxes don't go up. Now, is that possible? Or is it only some taxes might not go up? Will your school taxes go up like the usual old bullet that they always do? Will the provincial government hold the rein on it? Will this put the municipalities in an intolerable situation in relation to their negotiations with the CUPE? Not exactly the softest union in the world, or not exactly the softest leadership in the world. My own feeling is that the CUPE membership might be quite happy with a modest increase, but the CUPE leadership will not take it and will be fulminating that Section 11 has been brought in as part of a diabolical plan to clip their wings, while Big Brother is clipping the wings of their employers, the municipal councils, the school boards, and the hospital districts. My first guest this morning, Evan Wolfe, Minister of Finance, Social Credit Government, Victoria.
1895, the tradition of quality and service at Stong's. Vancouver's first Stong's market was established nearly 50 years ago. Now there are 5 Stong's in Vancouver and the North Shore. Bright, modern supermarkets, but still friendly, homegrown stores. 100% independently owned and operated, Stong's, providing quality and service from their family to yours.
Tom Constable, Mayor of Burnaby, meet Evan Wolfe, Minister of Finance.
Good morning, Jack. Good morning, Evan. Yes, we've met before.
And you're one of those mayors who are very happy indeed with the dictum proclaimed by Mr. Wolfe, I am quite sure.
No, I'm extremely unhappy. I think it was irresponsible, unwarranted interference in municipal affairs. And I'm extremely unhappy, along with many other municipal leaders. Completely unnecessary.
Well, could I respond to that, Jack?
Please,
yeah,
please.
I'm pleased to talk to Tom about it because, as he well knows, I've discussed this matter this week with senior members of the UBCM executive, including Mayor Volrich and Mayor Tom and Mayor Ferguson and Mayor Muni-Evers, just in the few days that we've been involved in this discussion. In any event, as far as it being irresponsible, it's a matter of collecting from the same taxpayer.
Well,
as I view it, and I think that
I might have added, Evan, it was politically astute.
Well, I won't say whether it is or not. This remains to be seen, but I think that it's necessary, and I know that it's very tough action, but it is not imposing any restriction on how a municipality spends its money, how it might diversify in those respects. It only places a ceiling on it, which is not new. It's not a new stricture, but it imposes a ceiling on those expenditures. And I think most municipalities will fit, in fact, comfortably within those requirements. In the meantime, this is a one-year program, Jack. And I'd just like to say that there's ample provision for discussion with municipalities through a committee which we're asking them to set up to arrive at future guidelines.
Your government and you keep talking about the need for cooperation, the need to work together because we're serving the same taxpayer, and that's true. But where was the cooperation? Where was the dialogue? Where did it all take place? You've had since way back last April, when this question was first brought up, the question of some restraints on municipal spending.
That's right.
Your government set up a committee, you know, but you waited right until Wednesday morning of last week.
So you have
I'm not suggesting that it was done deliberately, but it happens to be coincidental that practically every council in the BC met on the Tuesday after the holiday. and your statements came out on the Wednesday morning. And I'm saying to you, you know, in Mr. Van der Zalm's letter to municipal councils, he talks about the need for cooperation, the need to discuss the issues. Yet there was no discussion at all.
Okay, let's forget the politics for a moment.
Okay, let's get down to the issue, Jack.
Yeah,
I have no dispute, I have no argument with Mr. Wolfe's contention that there should be a restraint on municipal spending. But I suggest to you that if you look at the record of municipalities, look at Burnaby's record. Last year, the general tax levy only went up by 2.5.
What did the budget go up, though, Tom?
The budget went up about 7%, less than 7%.
I see.
Now,
Well,
what
that's
I'm
different
saying,
thing than taxes.
look, let's take this year, though. Let's take this year. Our budget, as it is, and the provisional budget, long well before, and this is going back to October the 30th, when we received our provisional budget. In there, it would have seen our tax levy, our mill rate not going up at all, for a start. Our tax levy only going up about 4.7 or 8. And since October the 30th, Jack, we've taken off about $1.25 million off of our budget. And it's now down to, if it's adopted, then I think it will be adopted.
that's very good.
We may even squeeze a bit more.
Your only
But
point that you're, am
what
I
I'm
correct,
saying,
Mr.
look,
Constable, that
Jack,
the
what
only thing you're complaining about is the fact
the interference,
that they didn't
and I
give...
think it's political. Yeah.
Of course it's political.
That's right.
Somebody
and as long
had
as
to...
people understand that
Jack,
it's
we're
political,
all in this
and
together.
I don't think it's going to...
We have the same objective.
Then
to try to,
why did you not sit down with the UBCM?
There was lots of discussion went on. And
there was no discussion. What went on is statements that could be made, Evan.
You know, you'll have no difficulty, as you say, you know, in fitting within the program, as I can see. You've already demonstrated that, but we're talking about dozens of municipalities where there were sizable expenditure increases that really should be looked at.
Look, one of the problems,
The voice of the public, the voice of the public.
Jack, one of the problems
somebody
here,
had to call a halt to
I'm
the
suggesting, Jack,
continued
it was
increases.
already being done by the municipalities, and I think the provincial government could have done it in a different way, and that's what bothers me.
In some cases, yes, but in many cases, not.
Evan, do you dispute the fact that last year the average increases right across British Columbia was only 7.6%?
I'm looking at 9.6% for the year.
It was 7.6%.
And I'm looking at municipalities
in general tax levies,
where they increased 37%. Another one at 47%.
Compare that against your own government's record of last year of 14.9%.
No, not so. No, 9.6, and in a 3-year period, an average of 8.4.
This is the problem, Jack. You can make whatever you like. You know, you can make figures lie.
Gentlemen, the figures do not matter. The fact remains is that taxes, all levels of taxation and inflation have gone up at horrendous rates.
You know what accelerated the most?
Somebody had to act.
Tom, was the grants to municipalities went up 22%.
And what did it go down with the schools?
It went up 22%.
And what was the overall...
It was $17 million more
what
went
was
to
the
schools.
overall benefit to the taxpayer? It was less than 5% for last year.
The fact of the matter is that grants did go up to school districts and substantially
Evan,
to municipalities.
Let's take Burnaby. Let's take Burnaby for last year. Taxes went, school taxes went up.
Separately about Burnaby for last year. I just want to keep to the basic thing so that you leave good friends. Just a minute. You are each agreed that somebody had to call a halt. And you probably, Tom, are very pleased at the fact that when you negotiate with Coopy now through your joint bargaining, you can say, if you're not good boys, we'll use Section 11 on you.
Isn't that great?
Is that not good for you?
But is that good collective bargaining?
Is it essential nowadays, though? Must we keep on giving municipal and college employees and school employees the biggest slice of the pie for the most non-productive people in society?
That's why you have collective bargaining. That has to be discussed and negotiated across the table, Jack.
But it is a fact, Tom, that these policies of 5% will assist you, in fact, in getting the word out on what you agree is a modest restraint. Yes,
we've already done it.
That's what I say. In the same case of major municipalities.
What I'm saying, Evan, I don't quarrel at all with the need for restraint. In actual fact, I would suggest to you that Burnaby, like some other municipalities, were the leader in exercising restraint. For a number of years, before Proposition 13, you go back through the records and you'll see that we've been leading for about 5 years on this question of restraint. What I'm saying to you, I don't think that big hand was necessary. And you dispute that the fact that
I say with respect is it's not a big hand.
Well,
it's placing a ceiling on those expenditures, which you agree with.
Gentlemen, enough. I've got each of your positions reasonably clear, and I'm going to have a session now with Tom Constable and say thanks to Evan Wolfe,
Thank you, Jack.
Minister of Finance. But you realise, of course, the moment anybody gets a nickel increase in their tax bill this summer, you're going to be called a liar, a cheat, and a fraud.
I was called that last year when the taxes went up. So everybody, you know, it's a shell game, Jack. Everybody blames everybody else, but I just say we're all in it together, answering to the same taxpayer.
You better watch your budget this year. You better show some restraint in your budget.
I'm watching it right now.
I mean, right at the moment, you've got $700 million of pension funds in a bankrupt railroad. What are you going to do about that?
Well, the railroad is already committed to extending, to making improvements in the Fort Nelson line.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Well, no, it isn't.
You've got $700 million in live pension funds and not a way of earning a nickel to meet the principal interest of
As a matter of fact, that railway is improving considerably in its operation, on an operating basis, not including interest charges.
So
It's
the
paying
Royal
its
Commission
way.
says, says no. However, we'll leave that for another argument. I'm convinced it's totally bankrupt from the Royal Commission reports, and you appointed the Royal Commission. My thanks to Evan Wolfe.
Jack.
Tom Constable, stay there. Love your hairdo, Tom.
You do?
Beautiful hairdo. Webster and Tom Constable.
Okay, thanks.
Your unfinished basement. It's never seen, never used. Canfor embossed paneling changes all that. Your basement becomes a family room. Your kitchen becomes bright and alive. Your dining room, elegant, with this Buckingham pattern. No elaborate carpentry needed. No bricklaying either. This, too, is Canfor embossed paneling. Do it yourself. Do it now. It's so quick and easy. Here's where you find them. Available at these fine stores.
Hi there, want to come over and watch TV? I just got a new 26-inch color set.
I just got one, too.
Mine has a remote control converter.
Mine, too. I got a 26-inch RCA with a remote control converter from TV and Stereo City for $688.
You mean $988?
No, $688. Or I had my choice of payments on their purchase plan.
Purchase plan, not cash for RCA? Gee, I'd like to take you out, but I'm kind of broke.
Sorry, Arnold, but I gotta go now.
TV and Stereo City, 877 West Broadway.
Look at me. My eyes are too small. My nose is too wide. My cheekbones are nowhere. Now look at me. These are my eyes after I discovered the Merle Norman Studios. This is my nose, and now I have cheekbones. Because Merle Norman taught me how to make up my face for me. And Merle Norman did it absolutely free. Don't I look smashing?
Come to the Merle Norman studio nearest you for your free makeover today.
William Shakespeare's Hamlet, a brilliant new production set in the 1930s. Neil Monroe stars as Hamlet, giving the finest performance of his career. The National Arts Center Theater Company in Hamlet.
Coming to the Queen Elizabeth Playhouse January 22nd, 24th, and 27th. Tickets on sale now at all Vancouver Ticket Center outlets and Eaton's.
Tom Constable is mayor of Burnaby, and I couldn't resist getting he and Evan Wolfe together just for a couple of minutes. But, Tom, you've always been a good left-wing mayor, a good union man, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And now you're saddled with the responsibility of being a cautious and prudent employer in spades. Is that not correct?
That's true.
And really, what else could they do but put the hammer on it? You know what municipalities are like. You know what arbitration, what negotiations are like. How could they let Cupid go for another 10 or 12% this year?
Well, that's a different question, Jack. But as you know, I was a Labour negotiator, and I can honestly say that I was never responsible for a strike. There was one strike that was created by a walkout, and you know, I'm not trying to absolve myself from any responsibility. What I'm saying is that ultimately, whether you have a strike or not, ultimately the issue has to be settled across the table.
That's too simple, Tom. The best protected people in the labour force today are undoubtedly those whose employer has, on the face of it, unlimited funds. The municipal, university, college, school board employee. He's the only one who can always go and say, raise the taxes and pay my wages, isn't he?
That may be true. But, you know, we do live in a country where we have democracy and civil rights and freedoms, and the freedom to sell one's labor to the employer has to be met and kept, and that can only be done across a negotiating table. Otherwise, we're going to run into all sorts of difficulties that people have run into in other countries.
You would agree that certain strikes must be stopped when they are affecting the life and health of the community.
At a certain point, yes. But getting back to the question of showing fiscal responsibility, you know, my responsibility now is, as an employer, looking after the interest of the taxpayer. And naturally, one has to show restraint, particularly when the income of the taxpayers are being restricted, you know, by inflation particularly. So and that's why we have to show that particular restraint, and that's why I say that Burnaby has shown that restraint for a number of years.
But anti-inflation controls have now been lifted. People are free to go, generally speaking, across the country for whatever increases they wish. As he pointed out this morning, many municipal and school board employees have automatic merit increases over periods of years, as well as the negotiated salary levels. And this eventually is surely going to break the backs of the taxpayers, not just you people.
Well, I'm not sure whether you're saying, Jack, that there should not be merit awards or category increases. You know, you may look at it from the other point of view, and I suppose I'm being the devil's advocate now and not being the employer. You must look from the other point of view that when an employee is taken on at the lowest level in a municipality, it's accepted that they've got a lot of experience to get over a number of years before they can ask for the top salary.
That's okay when times are good, but times are bad now, are they not? Is it not a fact that costs have gone out of control in many areas?
Yes. Yeah, look at the figures of the provincial government, and I'm not knocking the provincial government, but what I am saying is they're hypocritical in asking municipalities to follow the conditions and guidelines that's laid down by Evan Wolfe, the minister, but at the same time, by the same token, they're not doing the same thing themselves.
All right, let's look at Burnaby specifically for the year ahead, 1979.
Yes.
Where will you stand physically on the 5% freeze, 5% increase maximum on general purposes, plus use of any surplus? Do you have a surplus?
Yes, we have a number of surpluses. Fortunately, I suppose, we have them in the budget. That is, that we have always shown them in the budget. Now, when you talk about surpluses, you have to be very careful, and we have to know what we're referring to. For instance, the provincial government has $636 million in reserve funds, and that was an increase of 11.5% over 1977. Now, are they going to put all those funds into general revenue and say to people, well, we're going to be able to give you some money back? Naturally not. Those monies are for specific purposes.
Right.
For instance, just as an instance, in our budget at the moment, we have $360,000 for snow removal.
Right.
Now, it may be that we won't have any snow this year and we won't use it. And so, you know, that'll go on to next year. But if we had to use all those monies up, as the provincial government is suggesting, I'm not quite sure that they're suggesting we use those sorts of reserves up, but just supposing that it was correct, next year, we could have a heavy snowfall and use all that money up.
He made it perfectly clear that in all the surpluses in 77 and 78, I think it was 77, 78, there's 180 million, and that will undoubtedly include the likes of your 360,000.
It may include, for instance, $1.5 million that we've put aside for the Kensington overpass. It may include $1 million for the Northeast Community Centre.
So
it may include the couple of $1 million that we've put one side for equipment reserves. For instance, our garbage collection fleet went along for about 11 years without any equipment being replaced, and council suddenly found out that we had problems. So we decided to renew some of that equipment and to start a reserve fund. Now, this is not unusual. It happens all over the province of BC. Unfortunately, Jack, whereas Burnaby includes all those surpluses or reserves, as we call them, either statutory or non-statutory, in our budget, some municipalities probably do not include them in their budget, and that's where they're going to run into difficulties. And this is where Mr. Wolfe is saying that they will sit down. Well, if they're going to sit down and talk about those things, you know, why
didn't they do it before?
In the first place, exactly.
Yeah, you have a point there.
Why don't they take the provincial budgets that were published by October the 30th, look over those provisional budgets and say to those municipalities who have extra large surpluses or look as though they're going to have large tax increases, whoa, stop. You're not going to be allowed to do that. If you do it, we're going to restrict the grants that you get. As simple as that, which is what was done up in California.
I know you haven't set your budget yet, but would you not have put up your general purposes mill rate this year anyway?
No.
You wouldn't have?
No, well, just, you're talking about the mill rate for general tax levies. Yeah. We would not have increased, well, who knows what a council may have been done, but the recommendations and our provisional budget and the actions of council so far in cutting back even beyond, you know, the provisional budget would indicate that we would not have increased the mill rate. We would have increased the mill rate as far as debt is concerned. There's two areas. Right. It gets rather complicated. We would have increased the mill rate as far as debt is concerned, but overall the overall mill rate would not have increased.
So it's a phony as far as you're concerned.
The budget would, at the moment, the budget will increase by about 4.05%.
So you're within both guidelines.
But Jack, you know, and this is a very good point, and Mr. Wolfe answered the question, I think, fairly and honestly, but it may have been a little misleading, and the note that I took suggested that there would be no tax increases. The statements that came out last Wednesday said that there will be no tax increases to property owners. But in fact, there will be tax increases. There will be. You can possibly look at a tax increase of 3 to 4%, even if the mill rate is frozen. Some industry and commercial premises will be taxed possibly 8, 9, 10%. So there will be hefty tax increases.
Hold your breath, Webster and Tom Constable.
Welcome to the circus. And meet Lynn Kavanaugh, professional clown.
Good, clean fun can be dirty work. So I use Arctic Power. Like me, it's a specialist. Cottons, colors, permanent press come out really clean in cold water, without hot water shrinking or fading. And in cold water, Arctic Power gets these fabrics bright, as well as clean. So brighten up. For your cold water wash, get Arctic Power, the cold water specialist.
When it's this cold outside, your family needs all the warm you can give them inside.
Carnation hot chocolate, it's frothy great. Carnation hot chocolate, so easy to make. Enjoy the extra rich, creamy, thick, chocolatey flavor in Carnation hot chocolate.
You don't need to add the milk, just hot water. Carnation Instant Hot Chocolate, the extra creamy, smooth, extra frothy, thick one. Your family will warm to the idea.
Hi, I'm Harry Moore from Raysun Shoes, and right now you can save up to 40% at Raysun. Our buyer heard about a possible shortage in the shoe industry, went out and bought the largest selection of footwear that I've ever seen at Raysun. But frankly, we're now overstocked and space is a real problem. However, that means good news for you. 20, 30, and 40% off thousands of sandals, shoes, and handbags at all Raysun stores. Come in, we'd just love to serve you.
Show it. We know how to show it. Big people show it. Oh, you love your kid and you know it. After day, big people show it in so many ways. It's hard not to think of the thing. It's hard not to think of the thing.
Your Bay card, show it.
Tom, I never like tackling these stories, but you've got to do it. I mean, I suppose as long as we make it clear to people that this is undoubtedly a political, but maybe an essential political administrative move.
Well, as I said before, there are a number of reasons, in my opinion, why the provincial government decided to take this action. One, I think Stevens jumped on a bandwagon in answer to Proposition 13, and he got a lot of attention for it. Two, the amendments to the Assessment Act, which spread or equalize, I think is the word that they've been using, equalize the taxes, you know, and the heaviest part of those tax increases went on to industry and commercial. Now, in Burnaby, because we realised what was happening, and it would have meant a 12.3% increase overall on business, we removed our business tax. In Vancouver, they didn't remove their business tax. And the consequences of that, Jack, was that in Vancouver, business generally had a 41% increase in taxes.
Saw that.
Okay, those people were the people who you know, pushed the so-called tax revolt here in the Lower Mainland, and the Board of Trade
just a minute, I missed a very
the
basic...
Chamber of Commerce.
I missed a very basic thing. He keeps talking, Wolfe talked about property tax, 5% increase in budget and the freeze of the mill rate.
Mm-hmm.
I did not ask him, to my shame, if that only covered residential property or industrial, commercial and residential.
It covers all property tax.
You're sure of that?
Oh, positive.
All property
tax. That's where the tax revenue, the general levy
comes from. So therefore, it's property, industrial, and commercial.
And business, yes.
And there can only be no increase in the mill rate.
No increase in the mill rate.
The assessments can change up or down according with the equalization or whatever.
Because of the equalization of property values, there will be, and because of the phase-in for certain aspects of the assessments, you know, industry and business will have again this year heavy increases.
All right, back to more basics, therefore. When you read what Kinnaird says, the BC Federation of Labour, you know, and the QP people, they're obviously legitimately concerned about the loss of jobs. In Burnaby, do you see any loss of jobs on your municipal administration as a result of this?
No.
No. What about the school board, with which you are not directly involved, but?
Well, we really don't know. Now, let me say this, Jack, that going by last year, the school board's overall budgetary increase for educational purposes was 6.75. If you take into consideration debt and capital expenditure, it was 8.6, or around about there, 8.6. Okay, the provincial government decreased their grants to the school board by 12 point something.
Mm-hmm.
So that meant that overall, although there was only a 6 point something increase in budget, it actually meant an increase of 18% as far as taxes were concerned. And 12% of that was because the government had not put enough money in. Now, Evan made the point just now that municipalities got a 20% increase in grant. Sure, and I thank them for it. I think one of the better things that this government did was to bring in revenue sharing. And I think I applauded it. I think it was great. And last year, we got a 21 or 22% increase in revenue because of that. Okay? But the school board dropped 12%. And the overall effect of that is that the taxpayer in Burnaby only got, and other municipalities, only got about a 5% increase, not sufficient enough to keep up with inflation.
Yeah, but the fact remains that they've hit it on the head with the pupil-teacher ratio, as you and I both know, that we suffer under a phony pupil-teacher ratio of 19 or 18 or 17, wherever it is. And by ordering them virtually to increase that ratio, they're looking forward to layoffs by attrition in all school districts throughout the province. And perhaps properly so.
I'm always a little reluctant, Jack, to get into the question and discussion on school board. You know, they are separate. Municipal problems are separate from school board, although we have...
You collect the money for them.
We collect the money, we get the blame. Okay? Now, you know, one of the suggestions of the provincial government, through Mr. Wolfe, is that municipal councils meet with school boards. Well, we've been doing this. We have been doing
hopeless.
it. You know, but it doesn't mean anything.
Can you tell the school board to cut its budget?
Nothing at all. We have no effect
all
at
you
all
do
on
is
the
get
school
the
board
bill
other than influence them into keeping down their costs. And I just, you know, told you that in Burnaby,